Okay, good. I see a lot of people that are new on the call today, so that's awesome. And I've got a lot of great questions that were sent in to me. For those of you that may be brand new to the Inner Circle, what I do is every month I'll ask you in advance for any questions that you have regarding any real estate questions, and I will put them into this PowerPoint slide. I'll go through those questions, and I'll also take additional questions that are right in the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel that you've got on your screen. You can just type a little question in there, and I'll see that you've got a question. So if you've got a follow-up question to something that I'm sharing with you, and it wasn't clear, or you have an additional question, feel free to type those in. I always make sure I get through at least the ones that were emailed to me, because those are those of you that took the time to do that and prepare and send those in advance. I want to honor my commitment to you to make sure that those questions are answered. So they're all in here, every one that we got up to like an hour ago. Anyways, I had a webinar today, this afternoon, a couple of hours ago, on judgments and liens, and it is phenomenal webinar. And I'm going to be doing a second webinar tonight after the Inner Circle at I believe 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Anyways, you can go to my website if you're not already registered for that and you want to hear about it. Even if you can't make it this evening, I really encourage you to register yourself for it, and then I'll just we'll send you the replay of it so you can hear what you missed. But it's pretty cool, especially if you're interested in little or no money down type techniques and some creative ways to make money from things that are out there and available for us in today's market. It's a really cool technique, and Mike, the guy that I interview on there, does a phenomenal job sharing, and he knows a lot about judgments and liens. It's really pretty cool. So I encourage you to check out that webinar this evening if you haven't already done so. Okay, I'm going to jump right into it. So welcome again. If you weren't on already, I'm going to go through some of these questions, and I'll just answer them one at a time, and then you guys will be able to ask any additional questions as well. Okay, let's see. If a tenant buyer loses his job and can no longer pay the rent, can I cancel the agreement, or do I have to scramble to find a new tenant buyer and pay the rent with my own funds in the meantime? Okay, I'm assuming this question is coming from someone who is looking at doing a sandwich lease option, where when you do a sandwich lease option, you're optioning a property from an owner, and you're paying a rental rate each month. You're agreeing to that amount, and then you're subletting it to someone else with a lease with an option to buy, and they are paying you a rental amount, and then you're going to keep the difference. So let's say someone is paying you $1,200 a month, and you're paying the owner $900. You get to keep the $300 plus the difference in what you bought it for from the seller and what you're selling it to for that buyer. You get to keep that difference in purchase price, and along with any other things that you work out. So anyways, if the tenant buyer loses their job, that's a tenant in your property. Technically, it's your property at that moment. You are controlling that property even though you don't own it. But it is truly, a commitment on your part. If you're going to option a property from an owner and agree to make a payment, then you need to make that payment during that contract time period. However, the contract can be negotiated, which means that if for some reason you want to protect yourself, you put something else in your contract that will allow for some particular situations. Now, if you have a tenant that's not paying in there, you can't just stop paying the owner. You'd have to at least evict that person. And that may be hard. In some states, it takes a lot longer to evict someone. So make sure that if you're doing it in a state, where where it's very pro-tenant, you might want to, to get more money down up front to really protect yourself. You really want to make sure that you are protecting yourself. So if you do have to evict that person and you're going months without rent, that you've got that covered. So when you get that option money up front from the tenant buyer, don't go and spend it, okay? Keep that, hold that in your savings account somewhere as what I call your rainy day fund, okay? But you are still technically responsible to pay that rent to that owner. Now, one thing, now let me go back to what you do not have to usually put another tenant buyer in there, although that's my preference, because obviously if I bought the property on a sandwich lease option, I know the deal's good enough. Why wouldn't I want to put someone else back in there and continue to do that deal? And if you've structured it properly from the beginning, you're not probably going to want to get out of that deal, unless something happens like the market crashes again or something like that. In my contracts, and I've got contracts on my website, on my bookstore, if you don't already have them. Some of you are my students, some of you are not, you're just in my inner circle. But they're in my pro-buyer contracts. It states in my rental agreement that if for any reason I want to get out of the rental agreement, that I can give a 60-day notice. So it's very easy to be able to get out of that, and that's standard in my contracts. Now you could put 30 days or, you know, whatever that you and the seller would agree to, but I typically end up going with 60 days on that. Let's see, I got some questions that popped up in the question box. Oh, how can, Gerald, you asked if how can we find out if our area is pro-tenant, and how do we describe pro-tenant versus pro-landlord? Basically, a pro-tenant area would be something like California, where they're very consumer-friendly, and they pretty much always consider that the tenant is right, and they give a long time to evict, a long time to get a court date. They favor the tenant in the courts. A pro-landlord state favors the landlords. Most places aren't pro-landlord, but for instance, my area, I wouldn't call it pro-landlord at all, but I would call it fair. I mean, meaning there's rules, and I follow them, and I can get a tenant out in, 45 to 60 days if they're not paying, as long as I do all the things that I need to do properly. All right, let me go to the next question. Hopefully that answers that. If that wasn't clear, you guys let me know. I noticed in the sandwich lease option ebook, it says utilities would be mine, the investor responsibility. Do you simply send a copy of the utility bills to the tenant buyer, wait until they pay you, then pay the utility company, or can they pay the utilities directly? Yeah, I always have my tenant buyers pay the utilities directly, except in the case of my area, which is Michigan. I pay the water bill, and then I bill the tenant. And the reason is because in Michigan, that actually becomes a lien on the property. And that if they don't pay it, it becomes a lien. So you don't want that water bill to build up and you not even know that they didn't pay it, and then it's a lien on that property where the seller might get stuck with it, or you would, and technically you'd be responsible because you're responsible to that owner to make sure that water bill or whatever is paid. Now, in a lot of states, they're not a lien on the property. And I wouldn't take over utilities until the day you move someone in, which means you're really not ever paying them, right? So let's say I'm working with the seller. Most of the time, utilities don't go into my name unless it's between tenant buyers, like that first question. So if I'm going to option a property from an owner, say in a month from now, then I won't put the utilities in my name until that time period. If I've agreed to a certain time period, I'll put my name on the utilities. If we are following my contracts, where I like to set it up where I'm not going to start the contract until I find a tenant buyer, then obviously if the tenant buyer is moving in, I don't need to put them in my name at all, because we're starting it when they move in and it goes into their name. But only in between, typically they'll go into my name. Especially in cases like Michigan in the winter, I'm not going to leave the gas off, because obviously the pipes could freeze, so there can be some liability issues in that also. Okay, the next question. I've got a good friend who's looking for a fixer-upper in the Delray Beach area, Florida. He's got 30 grand in cash and would like to see if he can pick up a house for around that. Do you have any properties in that area, or know of any investors who do? No, I don't. I don't have any properties really right now outside of my market, which is in the Detroit metro area of Michigan. But if you go to, there's some real estate investor groups that would be in the Delray area. I know there's some, like, I think that's real near Fort Lauderdale and some of those other areas in Miami, not too far. There are a lot of investors who live in that area that if you wanted to try to find any investor who might have something in that area, go to those meetings and start snooping around, or have your friend go to those meetings. Also look for maybe their Facebook pages on the website and see if they've got them. I don't know if 30 grand, heck, that sounds like a good deal in that area now, but because I think that market is really returning pretty fast and furious, kind of like mine. But he can also see if he can put 30 grand down on something and have the seller hold the financing for the rest of it. Let's say the property's 60 grand and you can put 30 grand down and pay payments on that other 30 grand. That's another way, although it sounds like from your question, he wants to pay only 30. I have no idea on that. I'd have him post some ads in Craigslist where he's looking for someone that would be interested in selling to him. That might work. Or he could look for owners that have properties that are trying to flip them in Craigslist, kind of looking for that investor, because probably in the 30 grand range, I've got to assume it's an investor type of deal. Okay, here's another question that came in. Which resource would be the best if I want to learn how to put together lease to own contracts for the seller and tenant buyer? Well, of course, my course. I can't believe you even asked that, but maybe you don't know that I have wonderful courses on this. So thank you for that leading question. If you go to my bookstore, actually, I'll give you guys a tip. And as part of my inner circle, remember, you get 10% off of items in my bookstore. So you've got to log into your inner circle to get that 10% code, and then you can go into the bookstore and order some things that are 10% off. But if you want to listen to a webinar that is specifically for lease options, I just did one recently. You could go to wendypatton.com/Wendy replay, and you could listen to that particular presentation, and I give a really good special deal at the end of that that's even better than my bookstore. So that's just a little hint for you because you're on this call today. All right, and by the way, if you've just joined us, I see a few of you have popped on since I started the call. I'm glad that you're here. I am going through questions that were emailed to me prior to the call. There's also a question box that you can put questions in, and I will get to as many of those as I can before the end of our time together. Let's see, here's one from, okay. Some good questions that are coming in the question box, but I'll get to those in a minute. I'm looking to see if they, because if you put a question in there and it happens to tie into the question I just answered, I'm going to answer it right away. If it's a completely different topic, as I get through these, I will definitely make sure that I answer those for you also. Okay, when is the next boot camp after the February session in 2013? By the way, I have a great boot camp. It's in Phoenix, Arizona, the 14th, 15th, and 16th of February, where I'm going to be covering sandwich lease options and cooperative lease options. And again, if you're in Inner Circle, don't forget to use that code when you are signing up for that, and you can get a 10% discount on that as well. If you buy my course, and you've got my course like that special at wendypatton.com/Wendy replay, and you buy the course, you get 2 tickets to that boot camp free. So, check that out too. The next one is going to be, I believe, we don't have the exact dates, but it will probably be in September, and it will be in Michigan in my backyard. Okay, the next question is, how do I find and use a title company to handle escrows? I'm not really sure what this question is, but I think it has to do with some stuff I teach in my course where, where the buyer, either you or a buyer, is paying a seller directly, and instead they want to be able to pay through an escrow company so the escrow company can pay the mortgage payment. I don't use escrow companies, but I know there are some out there that do handle that intermediary role where they'll take the payment for you and then they'll credit it right to the lender, but they do charge a monthly fee. I don't use them. I just make the payment directly to the lender, or if you needed to make it directly to the lender and mail it to the seller so that they feel comfortable it got made, there's always ways around making sure that that does happen to make sure that you're protecting. But if it has to do with finding a title company to do your closings, I would check with your local real estate investor group and ask them who is a good title company locally that works with a lot of investors. I always think that's a really good place to start. Okay, let's see. Good question, Arlen. I'll answer that in a minute. Okay, is your secret tip on the obtaining motivated sellers Calling newspaper, rent ads, and Craigslist ads. Yeah, really it is. That's one of my favorite tips for finding motivated sellers is right out of Craigslist. And you can find some really great Craigslist. I have a script. When you go to my, if you haven't already gotten this from me, or you don't have my course, I give it away on my homepage of my website. There is a box where you can put your email in there, and it will give you the motivated seller script, and it kind of goes through a process of teaching you some other things as well on how to find motivated sellers. But yeah, one of my favorite places to find sellers right now, and this is a hot market, guys. I mean, you know, I can even say just from last month to this month, and this is really weird for us because, you know, it's hot in most parts of the country, meaning that, you know, occupancy is very high. The rentals go very fast. There's not a lot of inventory on the real estate market. Things are moving fast. I just signed a deal on a property that I rehabbed. It went on the market last Friday. I got an offer yesterday on it, and I'm surprised. Truthfully, I was surprised I didn't get one before, but I'm happy that I got one. It was full price, no contingencies other than an inspection, and no weird, you know, concessions. I mean, it just very, very quick. So things are a little bit hotter now, and that means you're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive. I do use some other tools. Like I think someone had asked a question about my Craigslist autoresponder product that I use, which I'll get to in a minute. But if you go to my website, there's a resources tab, and I use a software product called Craigslist autoresponder, and you can have it search for like whatever types of things you want. I typically search for houses that are for rent, and I send them a particular email that basically says, you know, I sell your home for rent, and you change to consider selling it, blah, 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 and it sends them an email, and then that way the only responses I get back are those that already said yes. But I also have a script I use where you can call them directly and try to get them before they've already rented that property, because, you know, aggressiveness in today's market is going to pay off. I mean, because it is hot. Things are moving fast, and which means there are less sellers right now in today's market willing to do an option. So you've got to be more aggressive to find those sellers. But there are also a lot of sellers who are a little upside down or close to being upside down, or, you know, more just right at what that property's worth, that they're going to be more motivated to do a lease option, because if they sell it on the market, they're going to have to pay commission. And especially if they don't qualify for doing a short sale, they've got to come up with something else creative for that. And I think it's, you know, there's a great opportunity for us right now. But there's also but now in our market, there's a ton of buyers. So we've kind of swung in this, you know, spectrum of real estate investing from too many lots and lots and lots of sellers and few buyers to opposite now. You know, lots of buyers and not as many sellers. Actually, a couple of years ago, I would have said it's probably a fairly even market where there was lots of both. And the reason we have lots of buyers right now is because lots of people have gone through short sales, foreclosures, bankruptcies, and they can't get a mortgage. So anything that you can do that's creative financing for your sellers, or I mean for your buyers, it's going to be even more in demand. I mean, there's so many people. I mean, I'm sure many people on this call have gone through a short sale or foreclosure. Certainly you know many people who have as well, and those people would be very interested in probably doing, well, they probably would be interested in doing an option, unless they're the kind of people who say, I'm never going to own again. That's possible too. I've heard some people that feel that way. Okay. The chairman of the New York City Real Estate Association has spread my name across the city. Even the state warned realtors, real estate entrepreneurs, and investors, do not do business with me because I do not have my real estate license. I'm told I will get arrested if I do any real estate business without a license, even though I'm an entrepreneur and investor myself. Why am I being targeted? Is there a way to avoid this? I don't know if you're on the line today because you sent this question in, but I'd like to know why. They don't just target investors. It's something else. You did something that required a license probably in your state, like you charged a fee to put a buyer and a seller together, or you were doing property management without a license, and you've probably done it repeatedly. That's my guess. Let me know if I'm wrong, because there's no reason that they would target a real estate investor unless it's something that goes against the real estate ethics or regulations. That's the only thing I can think of. So you're probably not, you're being targeted only because maybe you're big, or you've done something big, or you've done it multiple times. That's my guess. Now, I guess then the next question I would ask is, why don't you just get a license? I mean, I am a licensed agent. I cannot imagine being an investor without being licensed. Maybe it's because I'm a control freak. I don't know. Maybe it's because I like to make more money. I don't know. But I make more money on my deals because I'm an agent. I get to control the whole deal. I get to write up my own offer. I get to talk to that agent. Many times they'll let me talk directly to the seller. So it gives me a lot more. I feel there's way more advantages being licensed than not being licensed. Now, do I have to pay my broker? Yes, I do have to pay a broker. I mean, you've got to pay a broker, but it's part of the commission. You wouldn't get any commission if you're not licensed. And I buy a lot of my deals through agents. So I like about a lot of my bank owned and a lot of my short sales. All short sales have to go through agents pretty much, everyone that I've heard of. So, you know, you might as well get a commission. Or if you can't get a commission on a short sale because you're not able to take a commission and be the buyer sometimes, then you can at least refer it to somebody and get a piece of the referral and give it to another agent. You can do that also. I recommend some of those types of things. If you're not licensed and you're considering it, or you're in the process of getting your license, I love Keller Williams. I'm a part owner in one of my offices locally where my license is, and I have referred people to Keller Williams offices all over the country. If you're interested, just call me or email me and let me know you're interested, and I'll try to see if there's a local Keller Williams in your area that's very investor friendly, because for the most part they're more investor friendly. I mean, Gary, that's why I decided to go to Keller Williams, because I owned my own office before, and Gary Keller, who founded Keller Williams, interviewed me for his book called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, and then he recently came out with the book Flip, and then they just came out with a book called Hold, and it's all about real estate investing. So in general, their offices tend to be a lot more investor friendly. So shoot me an email if you're considering it, and I will have a chat with the owners of their office and kind of get a feel for what their perspective is. A lot of them are students of mine. You know, a lot of the owners of the Keller Williams offices, where they've learned how to be creative and invest in real estate as well, so they can make extra money on top of their real estate commission. Okay, let me see. I'm reading some of these questions. Let's see. Okay, one is, Wendy, I've got 3 tenant buyers that aren't interested in the house in my ad. I'm not yet licensed. How do I go about signing them and getting a fee from them to get them a house? How do I approach listing agents that have properties they like? Well, if you want to approach listing agents, I've got a course called Working with Realtors, and it's got the scripts in there and everything to start working with real estate agents and how to contact them and explain what you do. You don't need a real estate license to find a buyer house, but here's the deal. You can't take that buyer and give them to an agent for a fee. What you can do is option the agent's house and assign it or sublet it to a buyer. Okay, that you can do in most states, and I'm going to give that caveat on there because there are a few states right now that if you're wholesaling options, they want you to be licensed, like Ohio, Florida, Arizona. Those are the ones for sure that I can think of off the top of my head. So get your license, or figure out how to do it by owner through Craigslist like I teach, and just do an option with that person. Okay, I'm reading some of these questions, so if I'm stumbling, you'll know why. How do you overcome sellers who insist on cash for their property lease option when you actually don't have cash? Sal, I'm not sure what you mean by that question. Do you mean they want to sell their whole property for cash, or they want a lot down? Because that's two different things. If they want a lot down, I would just say, you know, I'm only optioning the property I'm not buying it. I'd love to give you that much down, but if I were to give you that much down, I wouldn't be able to help a lot of other sellers that are in the same situation as yours. And, you were looking to rent your property anyways, so you wouldn't have been getting that down payment before. Now you're going to have someone who wants to rent it and buy it, which is going to give you, the best of both worlds. So hopefully that answers that question for you. If they want cash, there's nothing you can do about it, Sal. You're going to either have to come up with cash or walk away from the deal. Now, if the deal's good enough, I want to encourage you to go try to find someone who can lend you that cash, or partner with them if the deal's good. Partner with them and split it with them. You can always do that too. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. Okay, since Atlanta, Georgia is still a weak market, interesting. Okay, curious how weak. Okay, I'm curious if you're on the call, email me, because people that are in my inner circle, if they can't make the call, or even if they can always send these questions in advance, and that way their questions always get answered. They can listen to the replay in their inner circle area over and over. Okay, let's see. Since Atlanta, Georgia is still a weak market, there are a lot of investment properties there. I have found 2 properties that will give a high rate of return. One is a short sale and the other is a HUD home. They both are located in Lithonia, Georgia. I'm a realtor, but since my divorce last year, my credit is shot. How do I get the investment game with no liquid capital? I would definitely partner with someone who does have capital, or find someone who wants to invest but they don't have the deal, and ask them if they want to partner with you, or find out if they'd like to get a good rate of return on their money. If you're going to flip those and it's going to be short term, you can offer them a higher rate of return because you're going to be flipping it. If you are going to be holding it as an investment property, you can give them a lower rate of return and a longer term. And heck, I've got some lenders right now who have lent to me at 10 and 12% that I'm even holding long term, which is really unusual for me, because normally I like 5 or 6%, which is, of course, I always like, but I'm willing to pay even a higher rate now, because my personal returns on some of those deals, like you're talking, like Atlanta, we have fairly similar deals, except I think mine are better. But where I can get a property, I just bought one this week, $10,000, and it rents for $650 a month. That's like an 80% return on investment or something. After taxes and insurance, it's so it's huge. So I could pay 10% or 12%. I don't mind at all. And a lot of my deals are 50% return, so that's really a phenomenal rate. So hopefully that helps you. Network. Start telling people what you do. Start letting them know that you do real estate investments, and if they're ever interested in getting a piece of it with a good return on their money, start telling people about it, what you do. I noticed you recommend the Craigslist autoresponder on your website. Do you still use it? Yes, I do. What kind of results do you experience in this market? Good. Craigslist is always changing, though, so the software guy sometimes will come across a glitch where they block things for a while, and then he finds a workaround, and then I'll get a couple leads, 2 to 5 a day typically right now is what I'm getting. Sometimes it'll be even more, but because rentals are going so fast, it's just not as much out there right now. So I'm getting a couple a day that are saying yes, and we're just, sometimes they're gone before I can even barely respond to them, and sometimes they're so upside down that of course they want to do an option. They owe 140, it's worth 100. I'm not even interested in that. So a lot of those you still have to screen through to see what's a potential deal for you. What you can work on, which ones are going to work. Okay, let's see. I'm reading some of these here. One of my agents said that sandwich lease option is illegal. I think she just does not know. Are there any restrictions on conducting sandwich lease options determined by law or regulation? Max, not that I'm aware of anywhere. It's got to be the way it's being described to your agent, or the agent is just not savvy enough to understand more creative things. If you're saying to the agent, yeah, I'm going to rent your property, then I'm going to rent to someone else and make money on the two, they might interpret that as putting the two together. But if I say, I'm going to option the property from your owner, you don't need to tell them what you're doing with it. Of course you're subletting it. They know you're going to sublet it, but you don't need to explain the other half of the sandwich to an agent, because once you tell them you're not living there, once they know someone's going to be in there, there's no reason to discuss anything further. At that point, it's an investment for you. But certainly you can sublet something that you don't own. Oh, good. I got two different questions. Okay, two different questions. One's Arlen, one's Lyndon, about IRAs. One is, can you explain doing a sandwich lease option in your Roth IRA? And the other one is, how do you start doing lease options with a self-directed IRA? Well, you can do both through an IRA. I use Equity Trust in Ohio. They're really great. But there's a lot of other great ones like iPlan Group, Intrust. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them now out there. I just like Equity Trust because they've been around so long, and they're also a custodian of the money. And most of the other ones are not custodians. They don't actually hold the money. But anyways, how do you do it? Well, when any kind of contract that you're going to buy with your IRA, whether it be a lease option, a wholesale deal, a bank-owned property, anything, is done the same way. It's just your IRA is the one that you're signing for, not your LLC or you personally. Hopefully not you personally, but an LLC, let's say. So let's say, so I would sign, Wendy Patton for, Equity Trust custodian for the Wendy Patton IRA. That's basically, and that would be underneath my signature line. So instead of my LLC name, it would be that long thing, FBO, Equity Trust or whatever. They'll tell you exactly how to sign. But that's how you do it. And then when you're advertising and when you find a tenant buyer, your tenant buyer is going to pay your IRA. They're going to pay to the same name, to the Equity Trust, FBO for Wendy Patton's IRA or whatever, and they're going to write their check directly to that. Now, when they write that to me, I have a little payment coupon with Equity Trust. I have them mail it to me, not my Equity Trust. I have them mail the check written to Equity Trust to me, and then I mail it in with my coupon back to Equity Trust. So that would be, hopefully, can you guys hear? Tell me if you guys can hear all right. I just got a little flick thing that said there was some kind of issue with sound. So if you can hear okay, let me know. Or Robert, who's my web guy, if you can text me, just let me know if the sound's still okay on your end. All right, so hopefully that answered the question on the IRAs. Yeah, you could. This is really a great way. And if you also if you could do the IRAs, and if you're doing cooperative options, I love those because you just tie up the option. And by the way, most IRA companies will tell you you need at least like $100 down. So normally I teach you really don't need anything down, and that's true. But if you're using an IRA, typically they're going to want like $100. They want you to have some kind of option fee, true money in there to justify that return versus nothing in, because otherwise it looks like it looks like you're contributing to your IRA and there was no real interest in it or nothing that you gave a value. Oh, thanks to Andrew. He says, you sound lovely tonight. That's so funny because I feel like my voice is kind of scratchy, so thank you very much. Okay, I answered that last one, didn't I? Yeah. Okay, this one is a longer one. I'm in the process of trying to do my very first deal, and I have some questions on the cooperative lease option agreement with seller and rent credits. On the cooperative lease option agreement with the seller, number 5, what does it mean that the option fee will be credited to the buyer's purchase of the home? Well, that means like on a cooperative option, for those of you who aren't my cooperative option students, you may not have this course. It's when you option a property from an owner and then you sell the option to a tenant buyer. You're signing the contract, you're wholesaling that deal. On this one, what that means is, let's say that buyer gives me $5,000. I'm asking the seller to give that buyer credit for the $5,000 towards their purchase price. So that's what that means. And it says the seller understands that the buyer will receive and can collect the option fee received on the transaction from the tenant buyer's compensation for the assignment of the transaction, The amount will not exceed, in this example, $5,000 and will be credited to the buyer's purchase price of the home. Seller will allow for this credit at the closing. There will be an additional amount due to the buyer for the seller's settlement statement at closing of blank. And that's if, like, you're a realtor or someone and you're entitled to maybe get more of a fee, you could collect an additional fee upon closing. I mean, I guess technically you could still, I'm sure there's something legal that you can word to still get that fee, but technically you should be a realtor. And if you're a realtor, you might want to just do this as straight up commission instead of as a cooperative lease option. Just take a commission and get, put in the contract that you're going to get, 2 to 3% up front out of the buyer's option fee, and you're going to get the rest when it closes. You can always do that. Okay, I'm reading some of these questions. Mike asked, how are you handling the implementation of the Dodd-Frank Act? And that really, I think that has to do with the SAFE Act, Mike, right? And, the seller financing. How am I handling? Well, it doesn't affect lease options, okay, because they're not, at least at this point, they are not included in that act. And you might want to do research if you guys haven't been involved in that. But it has to do with holding notes and mortgages if you're not if it hasn't gone through a licensed lender. Truthfully, I have talked to multiple attorneys on this, including people that sit on the state board of licensing, the Real Estate Licensing Commission, and they do not know for sure about this. No one can give me a very exact, you can do this and you can't do this, and this is how you can get around it. Everyone's speculating right now, Mike. So I can't give you any advice. You got to get your own legal advice from your attorney. I still have done land contracts in Michigan, and I know you're in Michigan, so I've still done them. One thing that they've told me to be very careful of, though, is if you do, and I don't know if this is just a Michigan thing or nationwide, but where if you do more than 10, that you can't hold the escrow, the taxes and insurance escrow. If you can't hold more than 10, if you don't hold it, then there's more of an unlimited type of deal. And I don't know the exact. I'm a little cautious with who I do them with, but meaning that if I'm going to do a land contract with someone, I want them to have enough down right now, just because that act does exist and it scares me a little bit, not really a whole lot. And maybe it should scare me more. I don't know. But anyways, okay, talk to your attorney on that one. I'm going to give you that advice. Or an attorney who's in your real estate investor group if you're not in Michigan. I mean, any state. This is a nationwide issue. Okay, when doing sandwich lease options, how would I know which properties to follow through and get comps on? Because because I don't know if the property that the sellers are selling are good deals or not. Should I just get comps on all the properties that sellers call me with? I would only get comps. I'm assuming you're not an agent, because otherwise you just pull it up while you're talking to the seller on the phone and get the comps. That's one other reason I like to be licensed, because as soon as I'm talking to them on the phone, I find out the address, I pull it up on public records. In my state, I can find out what they owe on it, when they bought it, how much they paid, some of the public stuff. I can also see how long it's been on the market. I can look up comps right then, and then I have something intelligent to discuss with them. And I just tell them, hey, I'm a licensed agent. No, I'm not looking to list your property. I'm just looking to buy it. So let me pull it up. I'm going to pull it up on our MLS and see what I can find out about it. It says, I live in, how would I get these comps without having to pay a lot of money for them? Work with an agent. If you've got a good friend who's an agent, they may give them to you free, or they may give them to you free if you're going to do some deals through them when you do buy deals through realtors or when you go to sell it. I live in Illinois, and as you know, it gets really cold in the winter. Yes, it's just like Michigan. Will it be harder to find sellers and buyers for lease options here at that time of year? In general, I've always said it's really hard to find, for me, in Michigan, it's always been hard to find tenants between Thanksgiving and like this time of the year. Really for a couple months, it's kind of dead. Although this year, because the market has been so crazy, I have not had any issues with finding tenants at all. I do have one vacancy right now. It's because I just got that property last week, and we had to split the utilities. It's a duplex, and I'm going to put in separate utilities. Otherwise, there is no there's been no slowdown for me this year, which is it. In general, though, I would say yes. It's going to be more difficult to find them during that time period, definitely. If I have a tenant buyer who's paying me a non-refundable option fee, should I have them write the check out to me or an escrow company? An escrow or title company is not a bad idea, or for me, I have my own escrow company because I have a real estate broker's license, so I can put it in there and I can, call it an escrow, so it looks easier for the lenders in the future to be able to use that as their down payment. Now, if you're the owner or you're in the sandwich lease option, you can have them write to your company or whatever's on that contract, okay? It should match that contract. If you're doing a wholesale deal or a cooperative lease option, it's a good idea to have it written to like a third party or to the seller, even better yet, maybe with the seller directly, and then give it to you, have the seller endorse it to you. Because the seller knows you're going to make that much money. So there's no reason that they wouldn't endorse it right over to you. So that's a safe way. Or again, put it into a third party title company where it's released, based on the contract moving forward, something like that. Let's see, I'm reading this question still, let's see. I'm asking because I would like a mortgage company to recognize that option fee payment is equity in the home. I agree, that's why you want to do that other way. Where do you find an escrow company and what is the process? I talked about that before. Just work with someone in your local investor group. Join your local real estate investor group. I recommend that. When I have all the contracts signed from the buyer and seller in the cooperative lease option deal, what do I have to do next? Do I have to notify the government? No. I don't know why you'd notify the government. They have nothing to do with it. What you're going to do is find a buyer so you can get paid. You definitely want to get that done right away. Get your payment in. You want to start advertising on Craigslist or VFlyer or any of these, Facebook. Some of my friends find them. Keith and Shannon French are going to be teaching at my next boot camp, and they find a lot of their buyers right on Craigslist. I'm sorry, right on Facebook, because they put videos and stuff out there about their lease option properties, and people will find them. When I get paid an option fee from a tenant buyer, what are my responsibilities regarding taxes? You just need to let your tax preparer know that you received that money, and they will put it on your tax return in the proper way for you, depending on whether you have an LLC or whether they consider it self-employment income. You can talk to them about how they feel about it. Okay, here someone, Andrew wrote this. By January 1st, 2014, SAFE will apply, which should fall within your option period. Have a licensed registered real estate broker clear them and do paperwork. Andrew, I don't know, are you an attorney? Are you a real estate broker? And when you mean will it apply to option, you mean lease options? Will it apply to lease options? Or just in general to seller financing? If you could answer that, that would be great. Let me get through the rest of these questions. Okay, and I've got a bunch of questions. You guys can still put them in the question box. We've got about 20 more minutes on the call, so feel free to put some questions in there, and I'll get through as many as I can. Okay, let's see. I am new to lease options and was wondering, how do you get property managers and realtors to accept your offer without running credit or down payment? That's going to be hard. They're going to run it, okay? They are definitely going to run it, but in that case, you're going to need to put money down. Unless you have, and if you put money down, then they may realize that's why you want a lease option, okay? Anyone who I sell an option to, if they had good credit, they wouldn't be coming to me. So I already know they have poor credit. Over time, though, as you build up relationships with realtors and with property managers, then you can use your references and things. They may not even call. Like right now, if I do an option with a realtor in my area, they're not going to even pull my credit or even ask me for any information because they know who I am and they know that's what I do, and I can give them tons of references. So it's going to kind of void that for me right now because I've done a lot of deals with real estate agents. I ask this because I've tried calling FSBOs and rent by owners. Most are listing with agents but are doing additional advertising themselves because they are really motivated. They tell me they are listed to call their agent, but I don't because my credit is shot due to divorce and custody battle, and my ex is not paying any child support. I can't help you with that one if it's through an agent. If you have credit issues, that may not work for you. That may not be the right solution, but you can do it definitely from some other ways. You can certainly do it, like I said, with going right to owners. Use your Craigslist autoresponder if you want to find more deals that way, or start making the calls directly and just see what you find out. Just keep digging. Remember, the gold is in the follow-up. It's one of my favorite sayings. I don't find deals because I am waiting for them to come to me. I dig. For instance, I had that closing. I bought one today. I bought a house, and it wasn't a lease option, although I probably should have tried to get one on that one because it wasn't a bank-owned property. But as I was talking to the agent, I'm like, don't you have any other deals? And he came up with, he goes, yeah, I got this one coming up, and it happens to be in an area I buy. So I'm like, well, really? Well, you know, where is it? Where is it? So I've asked him to kind of let me know where that deal is, and I'm very interested in looking at that property, but it's not listed yet, so it's cool. Ask, tell people, dig, follow up. Now, if I don't hear from him, well, I heard he gave me the address and told me where the keys hidden for me to get in it. But if I had not heard from him, I would keep following up with him. If you've gotten a good deal from another realtor in the past, keep following up with them. You know, continue to build relationships. Talk to your sellers. Hey, do you have any friends who might be interested in selling their home the same way? You know, birds of a feather flock together, and they are your best reference. They're your very best reference. Okay, in a cooperative lease option deal, if the seller wants a security deposit, is that paid by me or the tenant buyer? The tenant buyer, because you're not going to be involved in that deal, so everything's going to come from the tenant buyer. What that's going to do, though, if they want a security deposit, though, is probably going to be to reduce their option fee by that amount. So let's say the buyer only has $6,000 down and they want $1,000 in security deposit. That means there's only $5,000 that can go to you. So just make sure you find someone who's got what you want out of the deal plus the security deposit, which the seller wants, plus the first month's rent. So they might have to have a little bit more money, or you may have to take a little bit less. In a cooperative lease option deal, how do you show the option fee, assignment fee on the sales contract in order to give a credit to both the tenant buyer and the investor? I think, you know, coincidentally, that was the same kind of question that was asked in the beginning of this. And we kind of talked about this in one of the slides where it's in the cooperative lease option agreement where you put the dollar amount in there, and it also matches what's in the option agreement, just as if you were doing the option agreement. So that option fee is in there that the sellers are signing on. That way they're giving credit and acknowledging that credit for the buyer. Okay, so now I've got some questions here from you guys, and I've got, let's see, we've got about, what time is it? We've got about 10 more minutes, and I'm going to answer as many questions as I can that I can. Hold on a second. That I can in that 10 time frame. Okay, for sandwich lease options, cooperative lease option, and subject to wholesaling, when can I start to market the property? I do not have a realtor license. I start marketing as soon as I know I have a deal. As soon as I know that seller's going to list, or I think they're going to list or sell with me, sell to me, excuse me. My realtor hat, I got to take that off for a minute. As soon as I know they're going to sell to me, I start marketing right away. I just don't put the address in there, and I do not put a picture of that property in there until I have a signed contract with the seller. Be cautious of that. Oh, cool. Andrew said a CPA at his RIA group gave this update earlier. Okay, good. Well, research that and talk to your CPA on that, although your CPA probably isn't going to have a clue what the SAFE Act is unless they're a real estate CPA, and they work with a lot of real estate investors. Okay, let's see. Max said, How much would a closing cost look like for subject to transaction? Is it similar to closing costs for conventional real estate transactions? For example, purchase price is 300 grand. Max, really, okay, a subject to is when the seller just signs the deed over to you. So there are no closing costs unless your state requires you to pay a fee to record that deed and anything you've agreed to pay the seller or any other liens you want paid off or that you're agreeing to pay off. It's not like a closing where there's a bank involved. There's no bank. You get the deed and you're now the owner and you got to make their mortgage payments. So it's a lot less expensive than a traditional mortgage. It's much easier to do. Okay, I'm reading the next questions, let's see. Okay, let's see. This one says, if I get paid when I do a subject to an upside down property and wholesale this deal to an end buyer, should I use some of the money I get to pay down the principal or just let the end buyers keep the house upside down? I don't understand that question, Max. I'm sorry, but I would be very cautious of taking a deed to a property that's upside down unless it's barely upside down and the mortgage terms are phenomenal, really low interest rates, locked in for a long time period, the payment's really low, and your market is appreciating rapidly. Otherwise, I don't know why you'd even want to start upside down. I just wouldn't do it. Is there a method you use to overcome sellers checking your credit? Just building rapport and working directly with the seller, Sal, is where I'd start. If the sellers are behind, and by the way, if I've had anyone ever run my credit, I can't think of it. I've had several sellers ask me for my Social Security number over the years, but I never signed a release for them to be able to run it, so I'm sure they never ran it. They just felt comfortable once I gave it to them with no hesitation whatsoever. I just, here you go, here's my Social Security number. They probably didn't feel like anything was wrong or weird about that. Hey guys, if you still have any more questions, I've got a few more minutes. You can put them in that question box in on the GoToWebinar panel. Okay, and those are really the only questions that I have, unless you guys have any other additional questions. I would love to answer some more questions for you because we've got a few more minutes. Otherwise, I answered all of the questions that you guys put up there. And there is we put up, can you go to the chat box? You can head over to that link and you can register for my webinar that I'm holding tonight on judgments and liens at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can register for it. Again, even if you cannot attend, if you can attend live, that's much better because then we can answer some of your questions while you're on the call. But if you can't attend live and you're interested in judgments and liens, just register for that and we'll send you the replay after that. Let's see. Let's see. What criteria would you use to finding a target market or area for doing lease options? Personally, Marianne, I would start with where you live. That's what I recommend. Unless there's some reason that you feel that you can't do them in your market, do them in your own backyard. What happens if the seller of a sandwich lease option goes bankrupt? Well, for the most part, especially if you're making their mortgage payment directly, I would just talk. Here's the deal. I can't give you legal advice because every situation with bankruptcy is different. They may not even declare that house in bankruptcy, and they may. What I use what used to be called prepaid legal. I use Legal Shield, and whenever I have any bankruptcy issue with a tenant or a seller or anyone, I immediately call Legal Shield, and I ask for a bankruptcy attorney, and I tell them what's going on, and then that way that bankruptcy attorney can talk to the trustee or give me advice on the situation for that particular property. But for the most part, they're not trying to not get paid. They want to get paid, and if that's been getting paid, they may be willing to continue to work with you and leave you in that property and leave that going. So just, talk to an attorney on that, definitely, because bankruptcy is different in every single case. If you don't have Legal Shield, you can go to, and I don't know if Robert, if you can type this in there, but to gotlegalplans.com, and that way you can just click right on that link. It's like $26 a month, and I can call an attorney unlimited times. I get unlimited legal advice. I can have them review, like even my contracts, you should have them reviewed by your state, an attorney in your state, because they might need state-specific things in there. They'll review documents at no charge. They'll help represent you in traffic violations. Like I turned right on red the other day, and I didn't see the sign that said no right on red, and I got a ticket, and I had a prepaid legal attorney go to court for me free. I didn't pay a dime, and they got everything dropped, so I don't have any points, or it won't even show my driver record whatsoever. So that, hopefully that answers that for you. Let's say I keep clicking on my mortgage. Can the seller be subject to get another property for their new home if they maintain the first mortgage? It depends on their credit and their situation. I do not know for sure. It really depends on them. If they are qualified to get another mortgage. I mean, part of the subject to deal, when I take over the deed, they're signing off to know that there might be a chance they can't get a mortgage, and I've advised them to talk to a mortgage broker or to talk to an attorney about doing the deal. And if they choose not to do that, I can't prevent that. Okay. I don't know the name. Okay, someone asked about what's the name of the company that I used to have tenant buyers pay the seller's mortgage payments or the mortgage payments directly to. Will they also prepare tax returns for both parties? How much do they charge? I do not know. I'm sorry. I have no clue who does that. I do not use one. I know, gosh, I wish I knew the name of the one off the top of my head. I know in my boot camp package, I do. If you're one of my students too, just email me and I will give you the name of it. I'll look it up. I just can't remember it, or maybe on next month's I will try to find the name for you. But you could just Google it. Third-party escrow companies, payment plan, or what would we call payment holding companies, or I don't even know what the right words would be exactly to find that. But hopefully that helps you out. Okay, we are at the end of our session, and I just want to say thank you. Wait, here's one more that just came in. Could you please explain, what I will cover at my boot camp? Yes, of course I'll explain that, Max. In my boot camp, it's 3 days of intensive training on sandwich lease options, and I do a lot of live calls, a lot of role playing on how to put together the contracts and how to find sellers and how to find buyers and how to screen them. And then I also have Keith and Shannon French, who are experts in wholesaling options, and they do, well into the six figures every year, just flipping option contracts right now. And they're going to be teaching that part of my boot camp, how they do that, how they find the sellers, what they say to them, what kind of services they use to find them, how they put it all together, how they make a huge income, for the most part part-time. I mean, they're not full-time investors. They do a lot of other things also, like travel like crazy. So it's really an intense. People that have gone to my boot camp, once you go to, you can continue to go back as long as I continue teaching them. And I've had people come 5, 6, 7 times to my boot camps. So they're getting different things each time, and they're learning new things that are going on. Like right now, what I'm going to be covering my boot camp this time is going to be different than it was 6 months ago, because the market's changed. I mean, literally, just in that 6 months time frame, things have heated up even more. We're starting to have a lot of recovery in most parts of the country. So it changes the way options are done now from just even 6 months ago, some of the things that, okay, so here's another question. Anyways, I was reading it, sorry, at the same time I was trying to finish my thought, or my statement about the boot camp. So anyways, it changes things each time. Here's one. I have a lease option on a property. I was contacted today by a person wanting to buy the property outright. I'm asking 103 for the property on the rent to own. My option is for 93. How do I handle this? I am not a real estate agent, but I would like to still get something on the deal. Well, Tom, if you have an option at 93, what are they willing to pay? I mean, do you know what that buyer is willing to pay for it? If they're willing to pay 103, then you're just going to exercise your option now for 93 and sell it for 103, and you're going to keep the difference. If they're willing to give you $5,000 to have you assign their option to them, your option to them, then you can just assign the contract to them. You can do that also. But you don't have to be an agent to be able to flip that deal, because you're a principal in that transaction. You're the buyer right now. You said you've got an option for 93. But I will question one thing. If you've got an option for 93, why are you only asking 103? That spread of 10 grand is not very much for a sandwich lease option, unless you're talking about a cooperative option and you're flipping it and you're out of the deal. So I'm kind of curious on that, Tom, what you're doing with that deal and how much you're paying that seller per month on that 93, how much it will rent for on the 103. I'd be very curious on that. If you've got a minute, you can type that back in, and people would probably be interested in hearing that also, because those numbers are kind of tight to me, unless I'm missing something. That one to me, if it's only worth 103 and you're getting it for 90, then I would definitely, okay, you're talking about a co-op, good. Okay, perfect. Okay, that answers that question. Okay, so we're done with our call right now. If you were a visitor on the call today too, and you're interested in being as part of my inner circle, this is one of the things that you get every single month. You get this particular call. You also get video training with me, teaching different real estate techniques. You get interviews with other experts on different real estate topics, and you get a lot of like little free bonuses and different things that I offer for sale that you get for free, plus 10% on any of my courses and products. So anyways, I just wanted to encourage you to sign up if you haven't done so. I would love to have you do so. Thank you guys so much, and you have a great night, and hopefully you'll be on the webinar later tonight, but I got to get off now so we can go prepare for that, and I can have dinner in between. Thanks again for being part of the Inner Circle.